I'm going to apologise in advance. It's an extremely hot day here, and I've got to have the windows wide open. So if you can hear traffic and tractors and stuff in the background, I apologise. Um, but it's either that or keel over with the heat. Anyway, last time we looked at sculpting, and and there's a fly in the room as well. Last time we looked at sculpting, um, and we made the nose. Let me just add a mesh plane here. So 7.5. Um, and we started up with the plane. Let's edit it. First of all, I'm going to unwrap it. I'm not sure if I'm going to texture it yet or not in this lesson, but unwrap's always a good thing to do. And I'm going to subdivide. So let's subdivide. Let's say by about 100. All right. And change this to solid and put a matte cap on it. Nice gold one, I think. All right, so we looked at some of the basic tools in sculpting. One thing I didn't point out last week, because to be honest, I wasn't aware of it, is we kept making geometry or changing the geometry, and then when we wanted to smooth these areas out, I was switching to the smooth brush. Okay, but you don't actually need to do that. That was clay strips. So when you're in your desired brush and you want to smooth real quick, all you have to do is press the shift key and it will transform this to a smooth brush. Release the shift key and your mouse and it goes back to the original brush. Okay, so that's one thing. Shift C, what did I do there? I meant to do Control Z back. Right. Let's make sure I still got my geometry there. I have. Right. So that is the smoothing. Just hold the shift key while you're moving your brush, and it will become a smooth brush. This week we're going to look at some custom brushes. Well, when we open our brushes, we've got this selection of brushes, and from what I've seen, we did pretty well with them. But you'll often hear people say that programs like Mudbrush or Mudbox, sorry, it's an Autodesk product, or ZBrush are better. I wouldn't actually say they're better. They do have a more featured tool set, but we do have the ability to bring these tools, or some of these tools, or similar tools, into Blender. So we're not just limited to this Blender brush set. And I've said this before, as with any tool, there are differences between the tools. So there are obviously differences between Blender and Maya or 3ds and Blender Sculpt and ZBrush. But the real secret is learning the tools that you've got instead of wanting other tools all the time. If you learn the tool that you've got very well, you will do a much better job than someone who is only halfway into a different program. So anyway, let's say we can create more brushes, and we do that with textures. So we do have a we do have a texture space here. If I click on it, you'll see it's blank. Okay, what kind of textures? Well, we can import textures that people have made for ZBrush or Mudbox or whatever. And there's a lot of free ones around on the internet. But what I've actually done is I went to Pixelogic's site, who are the makers of ZBrush, and they have free downloads of brushes. All these brushes are what are called alpha maps. They're basically like alpha masks. And they will work by they will work basically as a mask. What they'll do is they will raise and shape the geometry in the white areas. Let me in the white areas and mask out the black areas. And that's simply the way the brush works. So what we can do here is Pixel Logic have got a whole library of them here. If you go to other places like DeviantArt and you do a search for ZBrush Alpha, you can get more. Okay, there's no end of them around. So what we can do is we can go ahead and start to download some of these brushes. So let's, I don't know, skins. Let's have a look at this. What have we got here? We got a big array of texture brushes for different types of skins, etc. So I'm just going to download one at random here. Let's say this one, this kind of lizard scale thing. Well, it's actually called lizard scales. Okay, and I'm going to download that. And with the Pixelogic site, it downloads as a zip file. So if you open a zip file, which I've done here, inside is actually a PSD file, a Photoshop PSD file. If you're a GIMP user, don't worry, because Blender actually reads PSD files. So we can go ahead and unzip this. I'm just going to drag this across to my desktop over here. So I've got that, and close this, and let me jump back into Blender. Right, now to load this brush, we have to come across to the texture tab first of all, and just wait for that noisy tractor to go by. Okay, come across to the texture tab. We've got a couple of options here: brush, mask. We want the brush, okay, and we'll add new, and we'll open, and this is on my desktop, this Lizard Scales PSD. So I can go ahead and open that. And you see that Blender does read the image. Okay, so that's all we need there. Now next thing we have to decide, you see it's opened up here. Okay, next thing we have to decide is what brush we want to use it on. Because I had this on the clay strips brush, it has loaded it automatically into that. But if I was to use the whatever sculptural brush, you see it's not there. But if you click this empty image, it is there. So I'm just going to go back to my clay strips brush because that's my preferred tool. And now I can start to bring this sculpt in. Okay, very, very pixelated there. Probably not enough geometry, but let me smooth it out, and you can see we're getting this kind of lizard skin. Not very clear, is it? Okay, we probably don't have enough geometry there, so let me Control Z. What I'm actually going to do here is I'm going to increase the brush size so you'll see the effect better. You see my brush size is very small there. So if I increase this and then I start to, there, you're seeing how we're getting this new brush effect. Okay. Alright. I meant to Control Z. I keep hitting Shift Z today. But that's fine. Okay, can we have more than one of these textures loaded? Well, yep, sure we can. Let's go back to Pixelogic site and let's find another kind of texture we might want to use. This kind of elephant skin, it looks like. Wrinkles. Okay, let me download this. Let me unzip it. I'll just drag that PSD onto my desktop. And it's called Wrinkles. Okay, so we close that and come back to Blender. We want to add a new texture, so we'll press the plus button here. Okay. Now you see it has kind of duplicate that texture and given it a new name, the 001. So I'm going to change that to Wrinkles. Whoops. So I know where it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back because I'm on my wrinkles, I can come back and I can now open that texture, the wrinkles PSD, and you see we've now got this wrinkle loaded here. Now if I want to swap between brushes, I can just swap textures. Okay, so let me try this wrinkle here. Why is it not showing up? Okay. I'm lagging. Well, let's try it with a different brush. Maybe it's a clay strip. So let's try it with the sculpt drawer and open up our wrinkles. And you see we're getting that there. Let me reduce my brush size a little bit. Alright. Now you can see it's kind of wrapping a bit. So we're not getting a texture that looks just like this. Okay. So let me Control Z back. And what we need to look at is brush mapping. Okay, so we've got some options here. And because this is actually a texture, it's tileable. Okay, so when we want to do a continuous kind of shape on a sculpt, we will need to change this to tile. Okay, but what's going to happen here is because this texture isn't seamless all the way through, you know, it's got this black masked out border to it. Well, easiest way is to show you. You see how it's creating this masked out border. Okay. Whereas if I went to the wrinkles where it does come to the edges and I start to, you can see that it is coming out like a seamless. Okay, so if I come back around, you can see it's seamless. I've got a very high brush strength here. Shift F and let's tone that down a bit. Okay, and let me just turn off the dyno, not the dyno, the symmetry lock. So now I can create this kind of lizard skin effect. Over my workpiece. And it is tiled. Okay. And, you know, I can go in and touch it up. You know, if I want to smooth it a bit, I can, you know, maybe come in a bit closer. Use my shift key and smooth some of these areas out. Or use another brush on top, such as the crease, and pull a crease in here somewhere. Okay. Now, we've got these brushes, brush textures loaded. But once we close the Blender file, they will be gone. If you intend doing a lot of sculpting and you get yourself a lot of these brushes, or even just a few if you're happy using a few, but you bring them all into a Blender file and you want to save them for use another time without having to go through the process of loading them all again and again and again. Okay, what we should be able to do here is what we should be able to do is able to come to File, External Data. My mouse is sticking now. File. 1 second, I've got to clean this mouse or something. Okay, hopefully that's a bit better. File, external data, and we want to check this automatically pack into blend file. Okay, see it's packed the two files, which would be these two textures. Alright, now we can save this file. You can either save it as a startup, but I wouldn't, because the more kind of textures and that you pack into a file, the bigger the file's going to be. What I would do is to save it as a file and save it as maybe sculpt startup. Right, okay. So now if I just open new instance of Blender, right, so if we look in our texture tab, it should be blank, which it is. Let me just add a plane here. Okay, let's go into sculpt mode. Okay, and if we look at our textures, we got nothing here. What I should be able to do is append, and I'll append from the sculpt startup blend, not from that. Yes, from that. Sorry. And I can come to my textures. My textures should be there. Shift or Control, select them all. Append from library. Okay. Now they're there. Alright. So you can bring these individual textures into a file, or the other alternative is, let's just open up a sculpt startup file, and they'll already be in there. So that's two ways to save these brushes, or well, you save it one way, but two ways to use them. You can either save them all to one file and open up that file every time you want to sculpt, but chances are you'd want to append in the model you've been working on into this file. Or the other way is use the same file and append in the textures that you want to use.